Well, I know my friend is very beautiful, but I'm a bit offended.
Forgive me. Your beauty brings light to this place filled with dark suits and top hats.
You've seen Dracula a variety of different ways over the years, whether it's been comedic, whether it's been dramatic, or whether it's been straight up terrifying. But this version might be the first time that we get to see Dracula get his groove back. Tonight in Movie Reviews, we are talking Dracula, A Love Tale. Stay tuned. Everybody, welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Like I said, tonight you are in for a treat because we are talking about Dracula in a way that he has yet to be presented on screen. And that's really the catch, right, with a new Dracula film, because we get so many over the years. You're hoping for a new vision, a new take on the same story that we have seen play out a million times before. And considering in the last 10 years even, we've received multiple adaptations, including The Last Voyage of the Demeter, Renfield, and even more recently, Nosferatu. They've each told this tale in a different way to a variety of success. But now we're going to take a look at Dracula and we strip away most of those terrifying aspects that we've seen over the years and instead make Dracula the new ladies' man. Tonight in Movie Reviews, we are talking Dracula, A Love Tale. Now, of course, before we jump on into that there, folks, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, no matter where you are tuning in. Got a lot of great horror content on the channel right now. A lot of really good stuff coming up for you that I want you to make sure to check out. Again, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. But let's not waste any time and jump right on into things here. If you have not seen the trailer for Dracula, A Love Tale, you know the man, the myth, the vampire, the legend. After a recent battle with the Ottomans leaves his lovely wife Elizabetta slain, Dracula turns into a vampire and spends the next few hundred years looking for the reincarnated self of his long-lost love amongst the masses. Finally, 400 years later in 1889, Dracula discovers that his new Parisian solicitor Jonathan Harker has a wife named Mina who very much must be his long-lost wife Elizabetta. Taking a trip to Paris in order to meet her, can Dracula regain the love of his long undead life? There it is, folks. That is Dracula, A Love Tale. Now let's get this out of the way really quickly, because I already alluded to it earlier here. You know the story in this film. You know it because you've likely seen another adaptation of Dracula at some point before. Doesn't matter if you're talking the original Universal release, we're talking Hammer releases, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Dracula 2000, Nosferatu, does not matter. If you have seen one of those, then you know the general gist of what this story is ultimately going to focus on. And the thing about it is that the story makes it so simple for anybody to pick up because it strips away a lot of the complications that a number of other Dracula adaptations have had. For starters, most of the scary elements of this story are gone at this point. Yeah, Dracula kills a number of people in it, and at the very beginning of the film, we actually get to see Dracula in his battle against the Ottomans, which we don't really get a lot of exposure to Dracula as like a soldier leading his troops into battle in a lot of these other adaptations. Like we saw a little bit of that in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but ultimately this feels, at least in my recent memory, like the best depiction of showing Dracula out on the battlefield and being such a skilled and feared warrior. So leave that in there. Into the film, sets up this big siege at Castle Dracula when Van Helsing and Harker and their troops end up trying to come in and save Mina's life and destroy Dracula once and for all. That's a really good battle as well too. But in the thick of that, in the middle of all of that, we're stripping away so many of those scares that you're used to. Whether it's the when we're introducing Dracula to Harker, we're finding out about Dracula's servants around the house, which are these living stone gargoyles, which really played way more for laughs than anything else, and especially when we get to the twist of what those gargoyles actually are at the end of the film, it very much lets you know that they are there for laughs. Like even the other vampires that Dracula creates, some of the victims that those vampires will take out, all of it is played very, very lightly throughout the entire film. There was only really a couple of moments where I was like, ooh, that could kind of be really, really spooky, honestly. But even then, you'd have to be very, very susceptible to the easiest of scares to find that. That is not the mood here for this story at all. They are very much moving with a romantic, almost a romantic comedy style to this film, which I think is the right way to go. This movie feels like it's Dracula for beginners. Like if you found somebody who didn't know anything at all about the legend of Dracula, and maybe they're starting to read that book for the first time, maybe somebody told them they need to go check out Nosferatu or Bram Stoker's Dracula or whatever. A lot of situations which could pop up. This feels like the movie that you want to show somebody who just needs the bare bones information about it. We get a really good cast in it. I think Caleb Landry Jones, who you probably know well from X-Men First Class, you might also know him as Get Out, plays the Count here, and it's a night and day different from Bill Skarsgård, most recently in Nosferatu. You know, I talked a lot about my issues in that film, that I know that's the way that Robert Eggers loves to make his films. They're gonna be period accurate, they're gonna look the way that they should and talk the way that they should. But the way that Dracula was portrayed in that film just completely took me out of things, honestly. And so it feels that Jones's performance as Dracula here in this version brings me right back in. It's more in line with what we've seen with previous depictions of Dracula. But on top of that, his portrayal also fits, again, the whole concept of this being a romantic comedy, to me at least. Dracula is still dangerous, he is still a predator, he is still a wolf, hiding, waiting to come out and pounce, but it doesn't change the fact that he has this softer edge to him throughout the story, that he's not necessarily looking to hurt people for no reason at all. Even his treatment of Jonathan Harker, which we've seen in other adaptations be like incredibly brutal, callous, it's non-caring, like he doesn't show any concern for him typically in the way that these are all depicted. The way he treats Jonathan Harker in this film, again, is even softer as well, too, wanting to conversate with him, wanting to get all this information from him. And yes, it's so he can find his long-lost Elisabetta, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a more friendly conversation than what we've seen depicted between those two before. A lot of that is helped out by the fact that Ewan's Abid, who plays Jonathan Harker in this, is so funny in this role. Again, Jonathan Harker almost comes off like the best friend in like a romantic comedy, because Renfield doesn't exist in this version. And so Harker in some ways kind of fills that spot that Renfield typically would. Like I kept thinking about Peter McNichol's performance as Renfield in Dracula Dead and loving it. That's what kept bringing me back to what Abid does in the role as Harker here. And I feel like that's also a bit of a stand-in for it, but it works so perfectly because Harker is one of the funniest parts of this film. Everybody really gets a chance to shine in it. We also have Christoph Waltz as Abraham Van Helsing. You have Zoe Blue, who's playing Elisabetta and Mina Murray. And you also have Matilda De Angelis, who's playing Mina's best friend, Maria. This cast does a fantastic job together here. Christoph Waltz is playing Van Helsing very, very subdued. Subdued for him compared to a lot of the roles that we'll see him in, but also subdued for Van Helsing just in general, because we've seen Van Helsing portrayed as just an absolute lunatic who will go to the ends of his rope in order to get his vampire to prove what he's saying is ultimately true. We've seen him more carefully reined in. We've seen him be a bit of a racial zealot. If we're talking like modern vampires, like there's various different ways that have been shown here, but Christoph Waltz brings a nice calmness here to this role, because Van Helsing is very matter of fact. It's very much a, look, I get this doesn't fit science and it doesn't fit religion. So we are trying to prove both of those things technically play into this and they also don't play into this, so we can approach this rationally. I love that about Van Helsing in this. It also added more comedy to the role as well too, just because of the fact that, again, Van Helsing is aware of how ridiculous all of this ultimately is, but at the same time is still fascinated by what's going on. And ultimately, Van Helsing is not doing this out of vengeance. He's not in this this battle because he has some sort of vendetta here for Dracula at all. This is something that was assigned to him, something that he's been studying, and it's beautiful. Like Waltz Van Helsing has what I think is probably the most beautiful moment of this entire film, and it comes. It's not really a spoiler. You know how these Dracula adaptations work out. It comes in the closing moments as we're reaching Dracula's end, where Van Helsing makes it abundantly clear to Dracula that you are still worthy of God's forgiveness, that I can still give you peace, which is ultimately what you're looking for. And let's ignore the religious aspect of it. I'm not going to impose that onto any of you. Just those words, you can see the relief in Jones's face as Dracula is taking this all in, because he's had this vendetta, he's had this grudge against God for centuries at this point. He lost his love. He's fighting out there for God, and he's lost his love. And the one thing that he wants is right in front of him. But the flip with that is that regardless of everything that he's been doing, God will still forgive him. God will still give him this chance. And I just thought, putting that into Waltz's performance here in this speech that he gives Dracula towards the end of the film, it's so memorable, and it made his performance one of my favorite Van Helsing performances that we've ever received. He is fantastic in this role. But again, it is a love story. And the way I would describe this is, it is almost Bridgerton-esque, because we spend the grand majority of the film watching Dracula try to romance Mina, and he's not doing it through deception. He's not trying to trick her. He's trying to approach her as a suitor. Her husband isn't there because of Dracula, but he's approaching her new and trying to give her any kind of memory of their previous life, of their previous connection, albeit while they're against the background of high society. And we see in this case here that even Dracula is finding so much enjoyment in taking in things like this fair that Maria and Mina ultimately bring him to go to as well. There is so much enjoyment in watching Dracula and Mina kind of fall in and out of each other's gaze throughout this entire film. His courting of her is so damn beautiful, and it's one of the only times I feel where we've really been rooting for these two and their relationship to work out, because in all these other adaptations where we are getting the love triangle between Dracula, Mina, and Jonathan, I think it's very natural for us to fall back on, well, that's Jonathan's wife, that's Jonathan's girl, like, they are in love. He's doing all this to save her life. It doesn't matter what Dracula wants or is saying, basically. This still goes against that, and we need to restore order. I think it's easy to fall into that with other adaptations. With this one, because Jonathan does play a central role, but isn't as present except for the earlier parts and the later parts of the film, it makes it much easier to support Dracula and Mina ultimately getting together. So we're getting those tender moments, and we really are seeing the connection the two have. You believe it, you take it at face value, and it's ultimately what you want for these characters. With all that being said, I think that this is a great way to introduce the Dracula mythos to folks who might not want to go through the heavy-handedness of a Nosferatu or a Bram Stoker's Dracula. Maybe they're trying to slowly ramp themselves up. This is absolutely the movie to do that. But to our horror first fans who are going to check this one out here, you need to know this is not a horror specific adaptation like every other version of this tale has been. A lot of the horror is scaled back in this one, and that might take you out of it if you're coming in to just see another scary, bloody Dracula adaptation. The blood is flowing, there's no question about that at all, but it's probably not flowing in the direction that you ultimately want it to. So with that, I am giving Dracula a 4 out of 5. I am incredibly impressed about the fact that a new Dracula adaptation that is still a period piece is managing to get me excited, laughing, smiling, just having a good time here in theaters. I enjoyed this watch more than I did Nosferatu, which is not me continually trying to rag on that film. It's just to show, though, that if you're like me and just didn't find that all too enjoyable, albeit give it a good mark, this might be more your speed here. So go and check it out. It's in theaters right now. I want to hear from y'all in the comment section about what your favorite Dracula adaptation ultimately is. Is it one of the few TV shows we've had Dracula show up in, or the very, very many movie adaptations we've received over the years? Let me know that in the comment section. And like I said before, folks, get subscribed, start following the channel, because we still have so much good stuff coming up for y'all this week, including reviews for The Housemaid. We are also going to be talking influencers, and then next week we are getting back to TV, and we're going to be talking another episode of the Creep Tapes of Welcome to Derry, and we might finally get back into Dexter Resurrection. I know the season is long since over, but I still got a couple episodes I need to catch up with for all of you. So that is the hope that we're going to get to all of that next week. But again, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button so you can stay on top of all the content I'm dropping over on my TikTok and my Instagram. You've likely been following along with my names in Black Horror History every day this month. I've also recently posted my Scream merchandise grab from Cinemark Theaters, which will hopefully be adding Regal and AMC to that very soon as well too. But that's gonna do it for me tonight here, y'all. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.